If you're going to practice being human at your third place loving community, when you go to your first and second and fourth and 19th places, you're going to be more inclined to practice loving community there too. When I was in high school, the sitcom Cheers debuted on NBC. Anybody remember that sitcom Cheers about the Boston bar? It became appointment television in our house. One of the few times of the week once we hit high school that my single mom, myself, and my brother were in the same place doing the same thing. We all loved that show. I think it owed its popularity to the fact that it was set in a neighborhood bar during a time when the suburbs were at their peak. And many places in America no longer had a neighborhood bar. The theme song was great. Do you happen to know that? No? I should have asked this last week. Never mind. Yeah. Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. You know this song. And they're always glad you came. You want to go where people know people are all the same. You want to go where everybody knows your name. Right? You all know it, right? You know, exactly. I'm telling you, right? I think people love that show so much, and that song sunk in so much because it expressed stuff everybody wanted but was kind of going away from American life at that time in the late 70s and early 80s. The mall had been invented. Right? Life gets hard sometimes. We all need a place where we can put down the daily worries, be social, but be engaged. Sociologist Ray Oldenburg, where the reading was from, he named them, quoted this term, third places. Some place that isn't work or home. Pubs, cafes, barbershops, hair salons, coffee houses, coffee shops, donut shops, the boardwalk, the pizza shop, the malt shop, the feed store. I think people my age might have been the last generation, as of yet anyway, where children even enjoyed third places. I would spend all day at the playground down the street from my house. There were no adults there. That wouldn't happen anymore. Right? The comic shop, the arcade became one when I was growing up. Strangely enough, even though I hated it, the mall became a third place, especially for younger people who didn't so much go shopping as just go there to hang out. Third places are in between work and home. And they served a function of actually being a place sometimes you stopped between home and work or between work and home. Between home and work, you stopped at your coffee shop and had your coffee and toast and talked to other people in your neighborhood on their way to work. On the way home, you stopped at the pub you liked and had a pint before you went home. There were all these kinds of places people had that sometimes they literally stopped at between the first two places. A third place. These places were great because you belonged. You want to go where everybody knows your name. Who doesn't want to go to a place where they're accepted and everybody likes them? Right? And although they're a little more casual, you didn't always need to bring with you or go into your life's biggest issues at the moment or your deepest problems. And you didn't always expect that of other people either. But we needed a place where we could go and just be, and be with other people. We also need places where you can be your deepest self and be very real and vulnerable, and you need places in between. Strangely enough, at third places, people didn't go too deeply into discussions of religion or politics, anything that might upset a fine balance of acceptance and weariness of the stranger. Downside of third places is they tended to be homogenous. Right? They weren't perfect, but you find them in all kinds of cultures, in all kinds of places, until very recently in our first developed modern world. Fascinating. For generations, third places were fixtures in important parts of not only our culture, but all kinds of cultures and all places in the world. In some places in the world, they're still incredibly popular and important. But for a while, they really took a hit and died off in our culture. The suburbs affected them because you had housing that was plentiful and next door to your neighbor whose house looked exactly the same. But there was no coffee shop on the corner. Right? Now the coffee shop was at the mall. Urbanization happened. The internet happened. Awareness about the dangers in society increased, whether real or not. I don't know if anybody still knows. But protecting got much more parentive, and all of a sudden the playground was not a third place you could send your child to go third place with other children. They really faded out for a while. In the late 90s, around the turn of the century, they started a gradual comeback. Craft breweries, craft wineries and distilleries, who also offered maybe food or a place to sit and sample their wares. Craft eateries. Local music venues started making a comeback in some places. When I lived in Houston, they sprang up all over the place in the time I was there. It was really wild. Libraries started to become third places with the invention of the internet. Once it was a place, if you couldn't get internet or couldn't afford a computer, you could go and use that. Libraries started to become third places. And even churches started being seen as third places. Usually, when this was referred to, it was a non-traditional church, such as something that happened outside, or a dinner church where everyone gathered for a meal, and that was their service. Or house churches that happened in someone's house. And many third places went from being casual to being yet another private place like our home or work cubicle. One reason, I think, for the rise in the popularity of Starbucks, whatever you may think of it, is it provided this new version of a third place where you could go be alone together with other people. And the resurgence of third places gave rise to co-working spaces where different groups, companies, people, business people shared a common office space and kitchen and restroom and had space to do their work. So they didn't have to go to Starbucks. There was a value to this. It wasn't quite the same as the traditional third place, but it had a value of its own. And then COVID came. COVID rearranged third places. Because now the first two places, home and work, were the same place. And school and home were the same place. And school and work were the same place. And all of a sudden, our places were all mashed together. Almost overnight, third places became second places. And we didn't even go to them. We accessed home, work, school, everything through the internet. So the internet, which had in a way become a third place of its own, that wasn't home or work, was now home and work and school altogether. Church went online too, started to lose some of its third placeness. And so did your book group from the library. People even had happy hour at home on Zoom, where they agreed to meet with their friends at 5 o'clock and each have their own separate glass of wine. What were we going to do now about third places? I think one of the most difficult things about COVID for so many people that went unarticulated was that need for a community space. Not quite aloneness, not quite immersed with your family or your most close relationships, but somewhere in the middle that became lost. And a lot of us had a yearning for that at first we couldn't identify. And then we all increasingly became more cabin feverish. And we just wanted to go out and go shopping in a crowd and go see a movie and go see some music. And slowly, as vaccines took hold and the numbers go down, I mean, we're spiking again now, but we did scouting missions. Let's go sit outside and eat. Let's go to a show. And people have returned somewhat to church and work and school, not always at home, but not always not either. There's still this hybrid everything that we're all doing now as a way of life. And one thing it's going to really have an impact on is third places. As this COVID happened and it rearranged all our places, we had something else going on. That all the things that caused the demise of third places helped to reinforce our isolation from each other. And whereas once a homogeneously populated third place might have been a nice cultural refuge, now it was an echo chamber like the internet. One of our great theologians, James Luther Adams, a 20th century Unitarian, would say, free associations are the cornerstone of a democracy. And by that he meant places where people gather freely that they aren't compelled to be, right? The Lions, right? The church, right? What he named are all these organizations that quite frequently, in many cases, had a third place that went along with them. Not always, but frequently. Because they mixed us with people who weren't just like us. And now the third places and the free associations tend to be homogenous and reinforce our own thinking and our own perspectives and our own values. And some of that's good. I mean, I really don't want to hang out with a white nationalist on Sunday morning. But sometimes it's not so good because the third places also at their best did have different kinds of people. And they got to know each other as people. And you may not have poured your heart out at the third place with people who might have been a little different from you. But they knew you enough that if tragedy struck, all of a sudden they became closer and dependable. You know, the stories of some guy who always shows up at the same bar all the time and he's missing for a week and people go, what happened to Joe? And they go find he had an accident, he's sick at home and he can't get any help, he has no family. Then all the people who usually go to the pub figure out a way to act like a church and bring him meals and give him rides to the doctor, right? We don't do that so much anymore with people who aren't like us. So I really think in these days we found ourselves in, as COVID gets to a different place, and we're trying to figure out life going on, work, school, parenting, everything in a place that's always going to be kind of online and at home and in person. Who knows how it's going to go forward? We are ripe for a re-flourishing of third places. We're in a situation where I think third places will have a lot that make them desirable. And I think one of the things we're starting to see is people are returning to churches. They're returning to these other third places, right? I think for 2 years I didn't go to the barber shop. I like the barber in my town. Sometimes there's a little bit of political crazy people there, but not everybody. And it's a barber shop. I'm an introvert. I'd like to just listen to everybody and take notes for sermons. But third places might be able to become really powerful if we can create them that really are open to engaging the world a little bit more deeply than the traditional third place. I always thought churches were odd as third places because a third place is a place where you're not supposed to have those real intimate close relationships, right? And unfortunately, for a lot of people, church is one of those places. People really don't know what's going on with you at very many levels. You're still kind of on the surface known. But what if you're a little bit more like a tiny little church in a New England town far, far away, where you've got nothing to lose by engaging people who are not exactly like you? Maybe there's a place everybody's looking for where everybody does know their name, and they're glad they showed up. And if need be, you can lay your heart on the floor, and it'll be okay. You can show up with all of who you are, even the stuff you still have shame about or you're uncertain of, and it'll be okay. It's a place you can play games in the middle of what's going on. It's a place you can be with other people. It's a place where you can talk about what's important to you. James Luther Adams said, and I say this all the time, I know, but it's so true. Church is a place where we go to practice being human. This is supposed to be the place where you go to practice your best self. How good can you be? And to tell you, you can be pretty good. You're awesome. Let yourself be that awesome. The world needs awesome. The world is in an awesome shortage. Right? This is what we can do now. What is the center of our community? Well, in many ways, it's loving community. What people are looking for, I think, now in this odd time in our culture is a place that really offers a real loving, safe, or at least safer community group to be a part of. That's not your family, it's not where you work, it's not school. And maybe as we focus on our center being loving community, we have to do that well. And if we do that well, all of a sudden, what's at our center offers a center as a third place to the community around us. How do we make the loving community not just something we name as what we do here, central, but what we give to everybody else, too? It's a both and. Because I hate either or stuff. Being a third place of loving community helps us learn how to make loving community elsewhere. If you're going to practice being human at your third place loving community, when you go to your first and second and fourth and 19th places, you're going to be more inclined to practice loving community there, too. And just maybe somebody who's there likes your way of being there better than some of the other examples they're seeing. And that's how the world changes. Maybe being a loving community third place will take on a new importance, a new emphasis. People want to connect with others to find their tribe, but also find a way to engage people who aren't their tribe. We've become too separated from too many others to make it forward successfully. Whether we like it or not, we're all in this together. And this is how we expand our third place. We're casual, yes, we're brought together by some kind of commonalities, at least a desire to be accepting and tolerant, make mistakes, practice forgiveness. Not just a place where everybody knows your name, but a place where everybody knows your heart. A place where everybody knows your truth. Where everybody is allowed to know you, and you are allowed to know them. If you dare, if you risk. Being this kind of place, the loving community, is a mission in itself. We used to say that a congregation without a well-defined mission defaults to the mission of being a gathering of like-minded people. And it was really dismissive, the way it was talked about. I wonder now, in this place we find ourselves in history, if part of what we can define as mission is just being that place that supports everybody, where everybody can come to practice their best self, to be known, to be seen, a place for inspiration and refuge and connection and support and making the neighborhood and the town a better place. And maybe that's enough now, where we find ourselves. Maybe this is the soul and the center that we've been looking for. Maybe this is our reason, our mission. Our congregations in Unitarian Universalism, we tend to, in our demographic, be full of good people. People who hate, discriminate only against discrimination. People who do valuable and important things with their lives and their time, whether their work or their hobbies. Maybe this is the third place mission, to be a place that better prepares, inspires, and enables people to be their best selves elsewhere too. To teach, to heal, to counsel, to advise, to parent, to grandparent, to love. Maybe we need to cast ourselves into the world as a place to center and recenter, to rest and to wake up, a place to care for the caregiver, inspire the activist. Maybe, just maybe, we found our soul again. To be a third place for the souls of the world. Thanks a lot for watching this video. It would help me out a great deal if you liked the video to give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this video with others. Maybe ring that notification bell so you can be informed when we put out other videos like this. Check out my website and blog at tonylorenzen.com for even more resources that will open your mind, touch your heart, and inspire your spirit.